Yeah.
नमस्कार, आदाब, सत श्री अकाल। मैं हूं डीएन श्रीवास्तव और आप देख रहे हैं द डीएन न्यूज। डीएन न्यूज के इस खास कार्यक्रम कड़क बहस में आज हम बात करेंगे रशिया यूक्रेन युद्ध की, जो महायुद्ध चल रहा है। लास्ट अबाउट थ्री मंथ्स, मोर देन 90 days have passed, और हम देख रहे हैं कि युद्ध का समापन ही नहीं हो पा रहा। आए दिन सैकड़ों की तादाद में लोग मर रहे हैं। लोगों को यूक्रेन से वापिस आना पड़ गया है। जो लोग पढ़ाई कर रहे थे, जो लोग और काम वहां यूक्रेन में कर रहे थे, विदेशी गए हुए थे, उनको सबको वापिस आना पड़ा। जो अभी हैं उनको भी वहां से बाहर निकलना पड़ रहा है। रिफ्यूजीज के नंबर दिन प्रतिदिन बढ़ते जा रहे हैं। एवरी डे वी आर सीइंग, we can see that the intensity of the war is escalating every day. It's not coming to an end. If we look at the past 90 days scenario of this war, what has happened? We have been thinking that Russia would capture Ukraine within a span of 15 days, 20 days, 30 days, maybe maximum a month. But it has prolonged to more than 90 days now, and still the situation stands as it is. Doesn't seem that the war is going to end. On the other hand, what we are actually worried about is the European countries, NATO, and the America and Britain. They are giving their full support to Ukraine with respect to arms, ammunition, and even economic funding and everything. Why would, in such a case, Ukraine bow down or surrender to Russia? He's giving, Zelensky is getting everything. We are worried about, is it going to be a nuclear war? My most worrying part is, I wanted to know whether this war is exactly between Russia and Ukraine, or is it a proxy war between America, NATO, and Russia? To start with, प्रोफेसर श्री प्रकाश, आपसे मैं अगर जानना चाहूं, मैं इसलिए इसको बाइलिंगुअल कर रहा हूं, हिंदी इंग्लिश में, जहां आपको जैसी सुविधा लगे आप बात करें, क्योंकि मैं चाहता हूं आम आदमी तक इसकी सच्चाई पहुंचे कि आखिर ये है क्या। ये लड़ाई शक्ति अर्जन का है? क्या हम किसी देश पे काबिज होना चाहते हैं? We want to actually get the possession of that country, or it is a proxy war between Russia and America? आपको क्या लगता है प्रोफेसर श्री प्रकाश? आपसे मैं कमेंट चाहता हूं। आपका म्यूट है सर, म्यूट को खोल लें, म्यूट को खोल लें, अनम्यूट कर लें। अनम्यूट करिए सर, अभी नहीं हुआ। म्यूट बटन है ना, म्यूट बटन है सर। माइक वाला होगा। हाँ ठीक है, ओके।
अच्छा ठीक। तो मैं पहले जो है इसमें आपका, मैं बोलूं?
आपका सिर कट रहा ऊपर से।
अच्छा ठहरिए।
हाँ बस बस बस, ठीक है ठीक है ठीक है जी, चलो।
ठीक से लगाना, ठहरिए एक मिनट, मैं जरा इसको ठीक से अब देखिए, अभी ठीक है।
हाँ ठीक है सर, चलो।
अच्छा, तो मैं शुरू में हिंदी में भी बोलना चाहूँगा। जैसा युद्ध ये प्रारंभ में था, उसका ये स्वरूप अब बदलता नजर आ रहा है। क्योंकि कोई भी संघर्ष जरूरी नहीं है कि जैसा शुरू में था वैसा ही रहे। और शुरू में नेटो का इतना इसमें इन्वॉल्वमेंट नहीं था। अब नेटो के देश सिर्फ अमेरिका नहीं, यूएसए, कनाडा, ब्रिटेन, पोलैंड और भी देश जो हैं वो इस युद्ध में उतरते नजर आ रहे हैं। सीधे सीधे नहीं, क्योंकि सीधे कोई भी नेटो देश इतनी आसानी से सीधे नहीं उतर सकता। उसको अपने पार्लियामेंट से डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ वॉर कराना पड़ेगा। लेकिन जहां तक इनका मिलिट्री आर्म फोर्सेस का सवाल है, नेटो की मिलिट्री स्ट्रक्चर का, वो अब इस वॉर में सीधे सीधे उतर रहे हैं। पैसा भी दे रहे हैं यूक्रेन को, और मिसाइल्स भी दे रहे हैं, एंटी एयरक्राफ्ट, एंटी टैंक मिसाइल्स भी दे रहे हैं। और उसके साथ साथ एम्यूनिशन, और जो ये पैसा दे रहे हैं वो इसीलिए दे रहे हैं कि यूक्रेन युद्ध की सामग्री खरीद सके। तो अब ये युद्ध जो है बहुत लंबा चलेगा। अभी तो सिर्फ 90 दिन चला है, अब कितने दिन चलेगा इसके बारे में कोई कह नहीं सकता। क्योंकि यूक्रेन ने अपने यहाँ मार्शल लॉ लगा रखा है। उन्होंने कहा कि 60 साल से, और 18 साल और 60 साल के बीच में सारे आदमी लोग, कोई भी यूक्रेन से बाहर नहीं जा सकता, उनको लड़ाई करनी पड़ेगी। तो जब ऐसा मार्शल लॉ लगा के लड़ाई हो रही है, तो ये बात साफ है कि जैसा प्रेसिडेंट जेलेंस्की ने कहा है कि हम अंत तक लड़ेंगे। अपने भाषण में उन्होंने, रोज भाषण देते हैं, उन्होंने ये शब्द इस्तेमाल किया है कि हम अंत तक लड़ेंगे, आखिरी आखिरी आदमी तक लड़ेंगे। तो जब ये बात रखी गई है सामने, तो ये बात रूस को भी समझनी चाहिए कि जिस तरह से रूस अंदर घुस आया था कीव के पास और मारियोपोल सबके पास, लेकिन अब जो प्रतिक्रिया यूक्रेनियन लोगों की हो रही है, उससे तो युद्ध और लंबा बिल्कुल चलेगा, ये निश्चित।
जो कीव के पास घुस आया था और वापस गया रशिया, इसके ऊपर कुछ बयान भी आए हैं. सम स्टेटमेंट्स हैव बीन रिलीज्ड बाय रशियन गवर्नमेंट आल्सो, मिनिस्ट्री आल्सो. I will talk on with respect to the war with Mr. Prakash Srivastava. Just give me two minutes because I would like a comment from Dr. Giri. Dr. Giri, मुझे ये समझाएं. I just want to know whether it is a real Ukraine and Russia war or it is a proxy war between US and Russia.
No, it's obvious. It's a proxy war. You know, it's obvious. Most wars in recent history in international community have been proxy wars. Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, they're all proxy wars except a few. You see, so this is certainly a proxy war. And the other dimension to this, कि इसमें जो मैं कोई वीडियो वगैरह देख रहा था, इसमें आंकड़े के साथ वो बता रहे थे कि ये हथियारों का भी खेल है, हथियारों का मार्केट को आगे बढ़ाने की बात है। और जिस तरह का वेपन्स का सेल्स हुए हैं ये वॉर के साथ, इट्स अमेजिंग। अब एक आंकड़े में देख रहा था 2020 में the entire weapon sale was about 40 lakh crore. Now in 2022, within 2 years, it is about 50 to 50 lakh crore. And then how these 5 countries, the Security Council members, the 5 permanent members, and 80% of sales of the weapons is accounted for by these countries. You see, सबसे ज़्यादा इन्हीं का हुआ है. And there are 5 American companies, you know, the weapons companies, they have made 250% of profit. You see, in the last year, can you believe how the weapons market is peaking during this war? So there is also a discussion whether it is a war or it is a kind of a conflict which is turned into war by weapons merchants. So there are several dimensions of war, and it is beyond many people's comprehension that these things could be going on. But how did it start and how it should end? People say war is a science. In this case, war is a technology, and diplomacy is an art. You see, I think we have lost the international intellectual reservoir of diplomacy, and I don't see, as you said, or Professor Prakash was saying, that it will continue, and that's worrying and shocking. That the international community cannot negotiate between the two countries and bring this unfortunate war to an end. Whatever may have been the vested interest, it is a proxy war. There's no doubt, as I gave you other examples. So whatever their intentions or the drivers of the vested interest, the war should come to an end. War is no good. People have no right to shed other people's blood. War is no solution. There is no winner in a war. But I don't know why these two countries, which were won till 1992, I think they are fighting to finish, as Zelensky is saying, will fight to the last man. That is madness. And again, Putin, I don't know what were his calculations, why did he go in, and he has got stuck there. And that is Russian strategy, actually. When there is no democracy, only one man decides. That is what the problem. They had the same problem in Afghanistan. They went in there with a miscalculated strategy, then came back without anything, returned, and they got stuck. You see? So this is Russian, absolute failure of Russian diplomacy and war strategy, and absolute madness by Ukrainians, and everybody else is making hay while the sun shines, as they say. And the weapon merchants are having a field day. Very unfortunate.
Okay. Sir, if I bluntly ask you, you said that the war weapon market has gone up during the last 90 days. If I bluntly ask you, is it only the reason that they want to escalate, increase their sale of the war weapons, or is it some other thing also? Because as Dr. Sri Prakash was telling, that the war will now continue for a very long time. Today, after the passage of about 90 days, you are talking of that, whereas Joe Biden has said this about 30 days after the war, that it is going to not end before January 2023. How did he predict that at that time? आप तो एक्सपर्ट हैं, आप दिन रात इस पे रिसर्च कर रहे हैं, रोज इस पे इतनी पढ़ाई कर रहे हैं, इतने समय के बाद आप लोगों को ये पता चला, उसको पहले से ही पता था, 2 महीना पहले उसने बोल दिया था कि ये वार जनवरी तक खींचेगा, अभी जनवरी से भी आगे जाएगा. ऐसी क्या बात थी? खाली वार वेपन का नहीं था, मुझे लगता है कुछ अंदर और भी बातें होंगी.
Are you asking me? मुझे पूछ रहे हैं?
Yes, Dr. Giri.
Srivastava, there are multiple perspectives in any event, and this is a kind of a complicated event, so there are multiple perspectives. I told you one, weapons वाला एक perspective है. दूसरा सीधी सी बात है, Russia has invaded this country, but Russia also says that we were provoked. क्योंकि हमारा border पे आके NATO forces ने particularly Poland में nuclear weapons वगैरह installation कर दिया. So we were, for our security, we had to fight. And the next target was Ukraine. After Poland, it was Ukraine, and Ukraine was strategically very critical to Russia. You see, and there are other arguments. Of course, we were the same race, and Ukraine was part of us. This is the Russian Empire theory. Ukraine and Belarus and Russia, they are inalienable parts of each other. That kind of. So all these theories are flying around. लेकिन basic ये चीजें जो भी calculation है, Putin made a wrong calculation, invaded the country, and other NATO forces and other Western powers, they have got into it to embarrass Russia and to fight a proxy war. I'll tell you, Sweden and Finland have applied to join NATO. Swedish, we have a project in Sweden. I can give you a personal example. They are cutting down on that, and the excuse is that they have to accommodate the Ukrainian refugees, and they are fearing the worst from Russia. So they are saving their money, development aid, to accommodate the possible potential refugees from Ukraine, and if there is a war situation between them, there will be other internal refugees as well in Sweden. Recently, $40 billion has been sanctioned by US to Ukraine. Yeah, so that it is certainly a proxy war, and Russia has to find a solution. Otherwise, Zelensky is going to fight to finish, and Russia will also finish as a major power. So it's really bad for everybody. and the entire world. This war must end.
Okay. डॉक्टर मिस्टर प्रकाश श्रीवास्तव, अगर मैं आपसे पूछना चाहता हूं, ये वार को लेके जो लड़ाई चल रही है, इतने सारे वार वेपन्स जेलेंस्की साहब को मुहैया कराए जा रहे हैं, ऑल लेटेस्ट टेक्नोलॉजीज, लेजर वेपन्स, मिसाइल्स एंड ड्रोन्स एंड व्हाट नॉट. अगर ये वेपन्स यूक्रेन को सप्लाई ना किए जाते तो यूक्रेन का क्या पोजीशन होता? और जैसा डॉक्टर गिरी ने अभी बताया कि पुतिन का रॉन्ग कैलकुलेशन था, प्रेडिक्शन कुछ गलत हुई उनसे, जिसके कारण ये इतना लंबा खींचा. आप क्या कहना चाहते हैं? क्या पुतिन का कैलकुलेशन गलत था? वार को लेके सिर्फ मैं जानना चाहता हूं.
So, DN, just for the sake of audience, whosoever is watching it, you can call me Air Marshal Srivastava because that pitches me up in the right direction.
Yes.
Okay, not Mr. Srivastava. We are not called by that.
Yes.
Right. So now coming back to the topic, there are few questions which must be answered and audience must know if they want to know the holistic picture. Your question has been moving around how long this war will last, number one. And is this war something like crowd-funded? That people are funding it, and what is their motivation, inspiration to fund this war? And like Dr. Giri said, that there had always been proxy war, but I'll just tell the audience there had been proxy wars, and not only, and there's no reference to ideology in the wars. Whether Afghanistan was for 20 years was fought for democracy by US. So they took it over from Taliban and handed over to Taliban. So actually there's no democracy here, and there's no autocracy or the single party rule kind of concept. The wars are fought for the national interest. The deriving factor is national interest, and then also conjugate factor is leader's interest. What is leader's interest? So in autocracy, what happens? Leader wants to continue his rule or regime, so he is very much interested in all the tools of statecraft which gives him access to that continuation of his rule, be it China or be it Putin in Russia. But there is a national interest factor. When Cuban crisis happened, why it happened? Because Russia went and deployed in 1962 missiles in Cuba, and America was very close by, some 60 nautical miles away. President Kennedy that time, he referred and he said, if you do not remove these missiles, in 24 hours, I'll do the nuclear attack. There was no war. He was just sitting there. Likewise, if the NATO consolidation, which had been happening, has been a provocative issue, everybody knew. It was very well known to all of them, but there was a concept going around of NATO consolidation because NATO was seeing some kind of fracture during President Trump's regime. And it is well known, it came in the press. So one motivation for West can be NATO consolidation. Second thing which comes in mind, President Biden is to fight an election in November. We talked about the date of January, wherein he fights for 435 congressmen and 35 senators. It's a huge number. If it goes other way, his approval ratings were very low. If it goes other way, then it was sure that he will lose and will become the lame duck president. And lame duck president for 2 years is not a joke in American context. So there was an approval rating problem. There was a declining economy because of COVID. There was COVID mismanagement in US. Actually, India managed the COVID extremely well for the kind of population we have, the kind of vaccination drives we did. And we did not bank upon their vaccines. There was that issue. So if you want to divert, President of America is most powerful for two things only. One is he can start war anywhere because military, he is the commander-in-chief. And second is he can take any policy decision in foreign matters. So if you leverage those two things, you find a provocation or consolidation, because the moment you provoke the known enemy, you know what will make them fire back. In military, we always know. We know what is the trigger. Like we know what is the trigger for missiles, what is the trigger for our armament, we also know what is the trigger for starting a war. It is a well-researched subject. Nobody has to tell. I know this is the threshold of trigger. If I do this, I will invite an attack. So inviting an attack is also a strategy, because the other guy on the international platform looks like an aggressor, and you can take all actions what you want in the name of saving the country. What has been the cost for America, if you analyze, the defense analyst, if you ask me, the cost for America for withdrawing from anywhere, whether it was Vietnam, whether it was Afghanistan or Iraq, is the cost of blood, the blood cost of the war. You spend two things in war. One is blood and another is money or economy. Now, this is one war. You asked a very valid question. Is this, whose war is this? This one war, which is very happy war. Dr. Giri has also brought it out. The happy war approval rating for Biden goes up. Defense companies do 250% more than what they did previous year. And there is no American blood lost. So who's the cannon fodder? And whose country is getting destroyed? It is Ukraine. President Zelensky was West-centric, West-oriented. He always wanted to become EU member. Now, there was a term which was known as Finlandization, that you can do NATO exercises together. You can be part of the EU system. You can be everything, but you can coexist with Russia. Do you know that Finland was the country which fought with Russia and against the West during World War II? It was part of the Axis forces. It was not part of the Allied forces. That's the contrast. Okay, but it is one of the developed countries. It has very little population. It has just 56 lakhs people, or we call it 5.6 million people. That's hardly any population. And whole of the population is centered around Helsinki. So it's a very vulnerable country. Likewise, Sweden. Sweden has some 10 million people. Again, it's not great population. It's a small population, very well developed, very peaceful. So now they are also joining. They could all live in peace. So some trigger has come from somewhere, some fear factor has come from somewhere, and that somewhere, you, whatever way you stress yourself, you do great analysis on all channels and everywhere, and so many write-ups, you ultimately come out, it benefits whom? Who's the beneficiary? The beneficiary is only one country. The others are tentative. The security, the energy security of Europe is dependent primarily on Russia. European countries need 400 billion cubic meters of oil and gas, out of which 100 billion cubic meters they produce themselves, is within their own areas, and 300 billion cubic meter comes from outside, and out of which 170 billion cubic meters is given by Russia through pipelines. And if you want to do the gas, you want to bring gas from anywhere else, you have to first liquefy it. Then you have to make it gas again and then put it in the pipelines. And from Russia, there is a network of underneath Ukraine, 28,000 miles of pipe network, 6 feet below. That pipe network carries and takes it to the refinery or to the gas processing plant. So this is the cheapest gas they get. And also, the two gases, if you take it from either Saudi or you take it from US or from other countries, and the Russian gas, the first filtration plant is different in the infrastructure wise for the processing plants. So it is not something which people are saying they'll be able to do overnight. There's a technical problem, there's a logistics problem, there are a lot of landlocked countries within Europe, and they have their own problems. Hungary has been on the forefront of telling it. Macron has been on the forefront of telling what Dr. Giri said, that let's follow the rule of diplomacy, soft power. Let's not get into the state of, see, every country, now I'll come to President Zelensky. Every country's leader is to protect its own sovereign. What is a sovereign? Sovereign's task is, and sovereign is President Zelensky, the task is to save its people, give them peace, and therefore they can have prosperity, their jobs and everything, not make them refugees in large numbers, not make them keep buying or getting weapons in donation or otherwise, because nobody is going to donate you. Tomorrow, time will come for payback. There's no country in this world who is going to just give you. So therefore, the Lease and Lend and Lease Act was signed by President Biden, that it can be given now and tomorrow it will be taken back from that country. It's a World War II kind of concept which came in again. So you're not getting anything free. It appears free today, but it's not free. It will be taken back from you. And then what will happen to the economy of the country? So sovereign should ask for what they say overriding. It has the overriding right to ask for your own death, to die for its country, which we do in the form of defense forces, but they are very minuscule form of the population. You cannot declare a martial law where you say 18 to 60, everybody is under martial law and shall be called upon to fight, and I'll distribute the rifles and guns and all that. That is actually not a great job from within the perspective of Ukrainian people and their peace and prosperity. 4.8 million people are refugees. The pain will start after some time. It will not start immediately. It's like new bright concept. Somebody comes, they look like same. They were not welcoming Syrian refugees the same way as the Europe is welcoming these refugees, because they are saying, oh, they look like us. They're as white and blonde as we are. So there is a concept over there. It will work for some time, but when it becomes overbearing, it will have its impact on those economies. Then you have weapons coming to you. If you believe, you're naive, if you believe that these weapons come, because I have fired those weapons myself, missiles, a weapon is inducted, it grows. People have to learn how to operate it efficiently, and thereafter only it can be combat deployed. It cannot be combat deployed dropping drones and everything, isn't it?
Yes.
So that means these weapons are also having some people embedded who are wearing Ukrainian uniforms and fighting for Ukraine. Ukrainians are giving good fight. They are fighting it for a long drawn battle. This, if you ask me now, I'll come to the last question. How this war will end? A lot of books have been written on this. Now people are saying what started the war, how will it end? And it will be a kind of frozen war. As it was always, I'll give the answer to that when we come for the next round, that East, if they capture East, that is Donbass area, which is known as Donetsk and Luhansk Republic, which they have declared as independent republics, LPR and DPR. Then you go to Mariupol, which is part of Zaporozhye. I'm from that area, so I know, whereby you take the Kherson. Kherson is very important because from there the Dnieper River aerates the Crimea. Crimea has become 70% agricultural because of the blockage of the Dnieper River. The canal is there. And then if you go towards Odessa, which will be a difficult battle, and you move your forces to Odessa, then you're blocked Ukraine. It becomes a landlocked country, where Transnistria also comes in play, where people at Moldova, part of Moldova, the Transnistria, Moldova part, and that's where they are trying to block it, and something has started. If that happens, then you got Azov Sea to yourself, you got Black Sea to yourself, and you got 80% of economy of that country, Ukraine, on eastern side. Even the wheat fields are more, fertile on this side, and they produce more wheat. So you have in 20% land, you have 80% of the economy. So from military perspective, this can be an aim in the mind. If you want to look into the mind of the person who started the war, who's the aggressor, he may have these kinds of seeds in his mind, but we can only conceptualize, or we can visualize or gaze through our own experience what he has in mind and what is the end game. But it will end. It's a prolonged war. I have no doubt on that, and it will be a kind of frozen war, because when these guys dig in there, then Ukrainian forces will try to uproot them. It will be a line which will be drawn, and then it becomes very difficult. And next round, when you come to me, then I'll tell you why it is very difficult. What is the attrition rate in terms of military warfare when you are an aggressor versus when you're a defender? That's a very different concept. Okay, I'll hand over, because I think I talked for a long while. So now for the other panelists.
Which is important information also. बट डॉक्टर आपने जो बताया कि Zelensky को as a president of that country should have first job was to save the lives of the people, और उसने मार्शल लॉ लगा के 18 से 60 साल के लोगों को वहां पे रोक लिया कि तुमको अब इसके लिए लड़ाई लड़नी है अंत तक। रोज के रोज लोग मर रहे हैं, रोज के रोज वहां तबाही हो रही है, एंड स्टिल ही सेज कि हम सरेंडर नहीं करेंगे। इज दैट द जॉब ऑफ ए प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ दैट कंट्री? दैट इज व्हाट जो आपने बोला। मैं इसी के ऊपर अभी 5 दिन पहले अपना एक खुद का वीडियो रिलीज किया हूँ कि he is not actually a leader, he is actually a comedian, so he is playing the role of a comedian। कि लोग मर रहे हैं तो उसके डेड बॉडीज को प्लास्टिक पैकेट्स में पैक कर रहा, दैट इज द जॉब ही इज डूइंग, एंड ही सेज कि मैं अपने देश की रक्षा कर रहा हूँ, अपने लोगों को बचा रहा हूँ। बचा क्या रहा है, सब तो मर के खत्म भी हो गए, अब वो करेंगे भी क्या? तो जो जॉब उनका था वो नहीं कर रहे हैं। एनीवे, डॉक्टर श्री प्रकाश, मैं आपसे एक बात समझना चाहूंगा कि जो सैंक्शंस लगाए जा रहे हैं रशिया के ऊपर, इसका क्या इम्पैक्ट होगा रशिया के ऊपर, और क्या इम्पैक्ट हुआ अभी तक, और क्या इस सैंक्शन को लगाने से ये युद्ध का समापन हो सकता है? दूसरी बात, अगर मैं ब्लंटली आपसे पूछूं तो क्या ऐसा कुछ यूएस के दिमाग में था कि रशिया के ऊपर आके कमांड करेगा और उसको अपने कब्जे में ले लेगा, इसलिए ये सारा खेल खेला गया? आखिर क्या ऐसा था कि रशिया को दबाने के लिए, मुझे लगा कि दबाने के लिए ही इतना कुछ किया जा रहा चारों तरफ से। इफ यू सी ऑल NATO आर्मीज हैव टेकन ओवर ऑन द सी आल्सो, चारों साइड से। तो आखिर क्या कारण क्या था इसका?
You see, I think that first point is I don't think these sanctions are going to break the back of the Russian military effort, because historically much more severe sanctions had been imposed against the Soviet Union, and even then the Soviet Union became a military superpower. In fact, no trade was ever conducted with the Soviet Union. There was a Berlin Wall. There was no travel took place between Soviet Union and the West, and so on and so forth. Those sanctions were even more severe than what they are today. But Soviet Union, because of its own science and technology, its own industrial economy and so on, became a military superpower. And Soviet Union understood that if you want to survive in this world as an independent nation state, first of all, you have to be able to defend yourself. Because Russia has been subjected to many invasions historically. Mongols came, then the Germans came, Nazis came, and so on and so forth. 7, 8 major invasions took place of Russia. So from the history, Russia knows that offense is the best form of defense. That's what they are doing in Ukraine also. That before NATO becomes more aggressive, unites whole of Europe against them, the Russian government wants to show to the world and to NATO powers that we can take care of our own security interests, and you cannot threaten us in the way that you're planning to do so. So I think that there is a strategic message that the Russian nation wants to give. It's not just Putin's war, as I've been saying. The whole of Russian parliament is behind this war, and they want to. They might not have. They might not have envisaged that this war will last for so long, but they're prepared to fight for as long as they also want. See, Zelensky might say they will fight to the last man. Russia is even more prepared to fight to the last man, because they have done so earlier. The Soviet Union beat back the Nazi Germany. Without the Soviet forces, the Second World War wouldn't have been won by the democratic forces, by the Allies. That is a fact of history. So, both sides there's a sheer military resolve. There's a sheer military resolve, and in fact, it is greater in the part of Russia, as far as my own reading and understanding. So ultimately, of course, Russians have already captured a lot of Ukrainian territory. They have moved up to Kiev, they have gone up to Mariupol, they have taken Crimea. And earlier, NATO has not been able to do anything about it. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea. What did NATO do about it? Nothing. They were just issuing statements. So today also NATO also has to show that they are a strategic power. This is becoming a combat between two strategic powers who have to prove to themselves and to the world that they have the military muscle to fight a long war. This is no longer a people's concern. It is really a concern of the military machines on both sides. And especially on the Russian side, it is also a people's war. Because the Russian people have suffered the disintegration of the Soviet Union. They have been told that you are very weak, you are not able to defend Soviet Union. So now Russia wants to show that no, it is not very weak. It can stand up and be counted as a nation. And Putin has been saying time and again that a strong Russia as a strong superpower, a military superpower, is a factor of stability for the world, because they then make sure that USA and Western powers don't do everything at their will. So Ukraine is now becoming a test case of a new world order, where Russia will also be a major power, and USA has to stand up to that also. So I think that the reason why this war will continue, and I'm afraid that other considerations are going by the wayside. Now it is a question of Russia versus the NATO, not even America. It's Russia versus the NATO country. And unless and until they are exhausted or they change their perception of the world order that they're trying to build, this war is likely to continue.
Okay. Dr. Giri, the same question here with you also. I would like to know the effect of sanctions. कि क्या हो रहा, उससे रशिया को कोई इम्पैक्ट पड़ेगा, कोई उसको इफेक्ट होगा, या अभी तक कुछ हुआ है, और क्या ये सैंक्शंस इस वार का एंड ला पाएंगे? और सेकंड जो मैंने पूछा कि क्या अमेरिका की कोई ऐसी मंशा थी कि हम रशिया को अपने अंडर में रखें और उसको डिक्टेट करें? थर्ड, आपके साथ एक और क्वेश्चन अभी उठा कि जैसे नेटो की बात है, तो नेटो और रशिया के बीच लड़ाई अब बता रहे थे श्री प्रकाश जी, लेकिन क्या आपको ऐसा नहीं लगता है कि नेटो इज आल्सो डिक्टेटेड बाय यूएस?
Oh, yes. NATO is led by US largely, but I find my friend Dr. Sriprakash, Professor Sriprakash analysis and forecast a bit interesting. Are we saying that Ukraine is not an independent country and Russia has the right to annex it by force? It has done Crimea, then Ukraine should surrender because they cannot fight Russia and simply say, you take over. So is that the position? That can be a position. In fact, I wrote in one of my articles that India should say that. If India is neither supporting nor opposing, I say India should say it is an internal matter of Soviet Union and the breakup has been bad, let them reintegrate their own way. That is one question. That is a political question. The normative question is whether we should support Russians' claim and support justified the bloodshed that is caused by this war. That is, these are the normative, these are the questions we have to answer. You see, so from the articulation of Professor Sriprakash, I get the impression that Russia has the right to do what it is doing, and Ukraine should not fight, give up their arms, and Russia should annex Ukraine. If that is a position, let us say that. But to say Russia they have to demonstrate to the world their might electorally, not on another country. Let us talk about Ukraine, their independence, their sovereignty. Either we say it's not an independent country. If we say it, then you cannot. You cannot sing the eulogy of Russia as a big power. When they broke up themselves. Gorbachev brought the reforms, two words, perestroika and glasnost, and the entire country broke up. You see, and it was an autocracy, people wanted to be independent. And to talk about Russia, the might of Russia or might of USA, what happened to USA in Vietnam? What happened to Russia in 1956 and Hungary in 68 in Czechoslovakia? They invaded entire Eastern Europe, but they had to back off. They could not dominate Afghanistan. They had to back off. Likewise, America also, you cannot dominate in these age and days an independent country. Even if, let me tell you, Russia wins this war, it has to fight a long battle forever through militancy in these countries that it is occupying. So you cannot occupy another country forever. Look at Tibet, who has been completely annexed by China, yet Tibetans are fighting. You see, and I won't be surprised if China breaks up into 5 parts and Tibet would be an independent country. So, taking over, gobbling up an independent, sovereign country and population is not advisable. So, I would never ever support that Russia should continue to at all to dominate any country, that any of the former constituents of Soviet Union. You see, that is, they have been independent, they have been broken away, and they are sovereign countries. And we should look at we're not talking about Russia or America here, talking of the rules of the international politics. We want a rule-based international order, not justify either Americans' interest or Russia's interest. You see, that is another. And this war might end. I agree with both of them. It will continue, but I won't be surprised. Suddenly one day Putin says that I'm backing off. Because as I said, that is what I was referring to. I was talking about the nature of decision making here, Marcel sir. When it is an autocracy, decision making is left to an individual. If it is a democracy, there are other people involved. If you remember, we all know that when the Vietnam War was going on, how much opposition was there in the United States? And you say entire, Professor Prakash says the entire country is with Putin, because it has to be. Putin is the dictator. So there is no democracy. So how do you know that people are happy with the war or not? There is no opinion making process. There is no dissent allowed. So the whole country theoretically has to be with Putin. And the whole country in China has to be Xi Jinping, because there is no dissent allowed in that country. So how can they oppose? So that is what I was saying. Yes, war is not fought on ideology. That is true. I agree with you. It is neither for democracy nor for social justice or for anybody's interest. It is the national interest. I agree. But I was talking about to take the decision to go to war. How is the decision taken? You see? So it is one man's decision. In other countries, then parliament has to pass it. There will be debate. There will be an opposition. You see, Iraq war. Look at Britain. The Tony Blair lost power because supporting Iraq. Their scientists committed suicide out of frustration. Labour Party split in the middle. Cabinet minister resigned. I said, we don't support this war. This is not our war in Iraq. Because it was a democracy. Now, Zelensky, somebody said Zelensky is counting the dead bodies or putting them in plastics and yet fighting the war. Yes, he's fighting his own country. He is being compared to Churchill. Churchill had the same situation when he was faced against Nazis. So either he had to surrender or he had to fight. And then he said, we'll fight. We'll fight in the seas, we'll fight in the mountains, we'll fight everywhere. That was his famous speech. And that is why Churchill is now remembered as the hero of the Second World War. And he said, if we compromise today, the entire, all successive generations will not forgive us for being weak and coward. We will fight because we are fighting for a cause. Why don't you give that to Zelensky? He is fighting for a cause. He is fighting for his country. And people are comparing with Churchill, and I somehow agree that he is showing guts. You see that he is the president now. He was a comedian or not. Ronald Reagan was an actor. You see, and there are many in world history who have been small, humble people and who have become the president. Look at Abraham Lincoln's life. You see, wow, what was his? He had to walk miles and miles even to get a book, and he became one of the most popular presidents. So forget about his background. What he is doing today is very important, and he is fighting for his country. He is fighting for his people.
Okay,
and he should be appreciated by all people, peace-loving, freedom-loving people, because he is fighting for the independence, freedom, and sovereignty for his country.
Okay, sir, if we all agree to what you say, that Zelensky is fighting for his country, then how is it different from Putin's fight and Zelensky's fight?
Putin is fighting for another country, to grab another country. He is fighting to retain the security.
The initial reason is that Putin says that he had danger to his own country, to his survival and existence, because of the NATO forces, because of the European Union and America, because they were into some such kind of activity that Putin found that it was danger to its own country, and then he started fighting for his country. And
Correct.
he went to Ukraine because Ukraine wanted to support US and NATO and wanted to be a member of NATO. Then it would have been a more danger for this. इस पे आप मुझे अपना कमेंट दें.
मैं ये बता रहा हूँ, सिंपल सी है. China, we have a danger, security danger from China. So we should invade Nepal and Sri Lanka because China is using Nepal as its base. So in order to fight our fear against China, we should simply invade Nepal and annex with us so that we'll be safe. Is that justified?
No, not annexing, but before starting the war, Air Marshal Srivastava, I think you will be able to clarify this more. जब ये स्टार्ट हुआ वार, उससे पहले क्या जेलेंस्की को पूरी बातें बताई नहीं गई थी कि आप नेटो के मेंबरशिप मत लीजिए, आप वहां यूएस की एक्टिविटी बढ़ने मत दीजिए, नेटो की एक्टिविटी वहां बढ़ने मत दीजिए, जो न्यूक्लियर प्लांट्स लग रहे थे, जो वहां पर बायो वेपन्स के जो लैब्स लग रहे थे, इन चीजों को रोकने के लिए ये सब उसके देश के लिए खतरा बन रहा था. Was it not the reason of this war?
Actually, there are two things which struck to me very strongly. So I will answer your question, but I must build up the context. Firstly, the President Zelensky must not be compared with Winston Churchill. There is a huge difference. Winston Churchill never declared martial law in his country. The moment you declare martial law, you become you are like another Putin. If you call Putin has not declared martial law. He also has a parliament. Zelensky has already jailed all his opposition leaders. The press, what you're getting is the Western press or the Zelensky's own press. So as far as war on TV is concerned, Western TV or any media, Zelensky has already won the war. But we go by the military indicators. The military indicator says that you also know people who lived there. A lot of Indians are there. I converse with them. They knew when exactly he is going to attack. While he was saying outside that no attack is possible, and Mike Miley was saying that if Russians attack, they can take over in 72 hours. This will call false flagging to build up the tempo. On one side, you say they can win in 72 hours. On another side, Zelensky has gone on record, and you must have seen a lot of videos. No, nobody is going to attack us. Nobody can attack us. And I will become a member of NATO. Becoming a member of NATO was also enshrined in their constitution. That's the chapter 5, article 102 says that the Ukrainian president is obliged to become member of NATO and EU. You have to contrast it with the way Sweden and Finland are being welcomed with open arms, and they say within few months and weeks they'll be a member of NATO, while he has been trying for the last 14-15 years. There are a lot of other similarities. See, there was this myth also going around. There's probably Putin wanted to become the erstwhile USSR. It was never in the mind of Putin, never has been stated, never any other media reported. But yes, you build certain hoaxes and certain fake things, because how do you justify a thing? How do I justify my giving to people? So the short answer is, when the war will end, Zelensky, the day Zelensky it's not last man fighting, is the last word coming from Washington, D.C. Instruction, stop the war, Zelensky will stop fighting. How Azovstal was handed over. It was told that, okay, we'll fight till last. And as far as coming to US, either you call it propaganda or false flagging, they said Iraq has all the bombs. There was nothing found there. It has never been found. The CIA, whatever director says for public consumption something, for their own consumption something else. So they know the real picture. They have a lot of real-time intelligence. And this war is being fought by US. One should know. Not only the weapons are there, the trainers are there, and the people in uniform are there, Ukrainian uniform are there. They also have real-time information. Let me tell our viewers here one thing very simply as a military man. If I know the precise coordinates of the target, there are enough number of weapons available to kill that target. The difference between killing is only knowing. Like you have terrorist, it's very clear by the terrorist example. If you know who's the terrorist, you can always kill the terrorist. Actually, 90% effort of war fighting is into identifying the enemy, what we call identification friend and foe. That takes all the resources of the thing, human resources, technology resources, whether in space, in cyber world, in other electronic warfare spectrum. It is all collated, and then you get to know the information of that is very very easily coming to Ukrainian soldiers. Killing, then if you have defensive weapons like two weapons, and these are not, you mentioned that they are giving high technology. No high technology weapon has come to Ukraine. They're all very old weapons, retiring weapons. They have to be emptied from the stock and the new ones have to come. These are the javelins which were being offered to India also. We didn't take because the range is only 1.8 kilometers. Okay. Therefore, I say if you're an aggressor, you can be killed because you're coming closer. The moment you come in my range, I'll kill you. I have the information about you. So, and the guns which are being anti-aircraft guns, they also are very simple this thing. So there's nothing very great about the weapons which are coming. The only thing, the great thing is about the information which is there. Target information, what we call targeting information, that is very expensive and that is coming free. So in that sense, it's a war between you and as when you say NATO, NATO is actually the head of NATO is the major contributor is US. So NATO is US controlled. So the moment we say NATO, we mean US, synonymous with US. I'll give an example. There was one admiral from one of the countries, don't ask me to name. He went and said something little different than what US was saying. He came to his country, next day he was retired. So it is very difficult. The moment I become part of NATO, I have to have American standard, or what you call it, NATO standard weapons. There are two standards, Russian standard and NATO standards in the weapon. I have to have NATO standard weapons. I have to have NATO standard, all communications. Even we have signed all the MOUs with them, which make us compatible with them. Whether it is Lemova, it is Beka, these are all signed, or Comcasa. These are all signed for that purpose. Communications, real-time exchange of satellite information, and the logistics management. Because these are the things which we perfect in our exercises. When I do exercise, what I'm perfecting? I'm perfecting my communication, my targeting information, my correlation and understanding of the on real time. This is, I say, is the massive effort which is being given to me on platter. Here's the target coordinate, hit it. That's how Moscow went down. Moscow was so many 100 miles, nautical miles away. How? And the Neptune missile would put it down. Neptune missile is Russian missile actually. It was not from the Ukrainian era. It was the same old missile. It became very effective because it had the targeting information. So the answer to the question is that yes, US is participating very vigorously, very strongly, and US leading this war. They are not paying any blood cost, and they are continuing the war. So there has to be some interest in continuation of the war. And the war will stop. US feels it should stop. It has achieved its objectives. As far as the stated objectives are concerned, there are only three things which came out from Moscow, and those three things were demilitarization, denazification, and no NATO joining. There were three things which came out in public. There was nothing else which came out, and the media there is very suppressed. So what it means, denazification, Azovstal is gone, and that's what the Nazi battalion. In a way, he can claim on that side, how well or good, I'm not going to comment on that yes, we have won for it. Second is the demilitarization. Most of the military installations of Ukrainian have been destroyed. They are in the jungles, they are fighting a war in different order of battle, and they are into trenches. So that's a different kind of battle. But the main support stations like we always have a main station where we rest, we get deployed in peacetime, then we go to war locations. War locations are jungle locations or the desert locations or the trench locations. So they are different locations. But the peace locations are different. Peace locations are visible. So all visible locations mostly have been destroyed. You talked about biolabs, they have been destroyed. Nuclear reactors are brought under the control of Russia. These are military indicators. He can shut off and cut off. See, let me tell you, Kiev is supplied by a hydroelectric plant which is 22 kilometers on Dnieper River. It's a hydroelectric plant which supplies electricity to whole of Kiev. And Kiev is the most populous city, most important city. He has not bombed that. Putin has not bombed it so far. And it is a very lucrative static target. But he has not bombed it. Some military strategists will think, why? Why you're not bombing these things? In the initial days, he never bombed the rail networks. He never bombed the road networks. Why? We were asking. It was not a blitzkrieg. That means he didn't want the war to end the same day. If I want to end the war the same day, I will not bring a column of artillery and tanks, which is such a lucrative target for anyone. It's a device to attract you. So the first point was that. Second point is, neither West wants this war to stop, nor Russia wants this war to stop, because something else is going on which is not achieved. That means the 20% part I talked to you, that is being consolidated. While you are hitting here, there, and sundry all over, that is being consolidated. The day that consolidation becomes, they will dig in. Despite all are saying sovereign, not sovereign, is it part of that? It's always a very open debate and very moral debate and very ethical debate. And as the new order changes, like after World War II, the countries took another shape. The shape was accepted, and that became the sovereign. Sovereign is a changing entity in the historical perspective. It is only an entity in that point of time. India was different. It broke up. It became two parts. Now Bangladesh is a sovereign. Other it was part by Pakistan was a sovereign. So wars bring about the change in sovereign. It's a kind of concept which is a running concept. There's nothing like a static concept of sovereign. Then what is sovereign? When you are a sovereign and you think you are a sovereign in the form of Zelensky or in the form of Biden, your role then becomes, for that area of people, you have a role to perform. And every state must try to remain in state of peace, and you should not transit to state of war. Any factors which are likely to make it transit to state of war, you should avoid as a prudent political person. And that time, like Zelensky didn't say, at 12, when they expanded up to 30, he didn't say a word, because he thought he's still consolidating his own finances, he's consolidating his own grip over the power, his own military, his own system. Coming back to what Professor Prakash said, and that's a very interesting point. I was talking to one of the Russians, and Dr. Giri must be also talking to a lot of people he will be knowing. I asked him, what will happen to you after all these sanctions? Because this was your very important question in between. He says, see, we are the people who have food sufficiency. We have food surplus. China is 20% food deficient. They are food surplus country. They export wheat. And they say, we have our own vodka surplus. We have our own vodka. Food is there, vodka is there. Now, their technology does not come from anywhere. They are the only country, Russian equipment is the only equipment which is fully manufactured within its own plants, through its own ecosystem. If I have to buy something for my Antonov N32, buy something for my Su-30, buy something, I don't go anywhere else. I have to go to only one of the Russian companies. My trouble is that also, no? I got 70% of military equipment from them. So I cannot be saying, so whatever I'm doing diplomacy, I'm doing diplomacy within the context of that availability of my power. See, India has no option. Culturally, we are closer to that. We are a democratic country. We don't want anybody to attack anybody. And we are neither involved in the attack, nor part of the attack, nor the beneficiary of the attack, nor anything. But by taking sides, we'll become one of them. So we are being forced all the time. I was talking to one of the ambassadors, or one of the foreign service officers who's an ambassador for US. I said, how difficult in the initial times, how difficult will it be for us when we are being forced by our friends to take a side? He said, it may be easy, we have always been ambivalent. I said, this time, no. This time, it's a very different situation. It will be very difficult. He said, but war will end in 5-10 days. I said, if you ask me as a military man, it will not end in 5-10 days. Because no war has ended in 5-10 days. You take mighty people like US entering what? Dr. Giri will quote that example. The simple places they went, they could not get out in less than 70 days, 80 days, 90 days, which had no support, nothing. Cuba, they entered. They faced a trouble. So it's not easy. When you enter a country, you can face resistance in many ways. And that's we classify as urban warfare. Urban warfare is one of the toughest warfare for any army to fight. More than mountainous warfare, which we fought in Kargil. So because there are people all over, and I can plant everything within the people, in churches, in educational institutions, in R&D centers, in residential area. And how will you pick it out? The targeting information, which I mentioned to you in the beginning, the targeting information gets very foggy, very fuzzy when you fight a war in somebody else's country. And that is the reason for you not to succeed. So targeting information, which Zelensky is getting along with the matching weapons, makes the game very disproportionate for him. If we have another round, then I'll give one example of Somalia, what happened, and why media is so important.
Okay.
Like media, we hear everything from media. What role media plays, then I'll give an example which is eye-opener and which is quoted in all our war books. So we as military strategists are very wary of media, people like you, because what you say is going to be heard and understood, and they believe it somehow. And if your reach you have in millions, and there are a lot of intellectuals talking about it, that becomes the truth of the day. That may not be the truth of the day. And as far as just answering one question, the President of United States of America is like a monarch when it comes to the power vested in him, when it's to waging a war. He doesn't have to take the permission of Parliament to wage a war. That is one fault line in their democracy.
Yes.
The one fault line. Yeah, Dr. Giri can check me out in case I'm wrong, but this is the understanding on two things: whether he's a lame duck president. He becomes a lame duck president. He's likely to become a lame duck president. He will still have that power to wage a war. That is his power, his commander-in-chief. In our country, the prime minister, in UK kind of parliamentary democracy, prime minister is not the commander-in-chief. The president is commander-in-chief. There he himself is a commander-in-chief. And he has this power vested in him. So he's the most powerful person on this planet. Powerful than any other, because he has the most powerful military machine with him. And he has this power vested with him by constitution, right or wrong. It is his business. He can start. And even then, more than she or anybody else, at least they are known autocrats. So they have to take care of that whatever they do, it doesn't look like autocracy. But in his case, it is not so. Okay. Next round, then I'll speak.
Yes. I think Dr. Giri wanted to react on what you said. But I would like to have two more clarifications from you, Dr. Giri, from you also, and because we are short of time also. So very quick comments. One is that why did Russia not capture on Kyiv? What was the reason behind it? Almost captured, but then it left also and it went back. And secondly, today a statement from Russian ministry has come that they say that we do not want this war to end soon. We want a prolonged war. If we wanted it to end, we would have done it within 15 days. What are your comments on these, Dr. Giri?
The first one, why did Russia not capture Kyiv? It could not capture Kyiv. And if that statement the Russian army officer is saying, that's a stupid statement. I don't think Russia is gaining anything by prolonging it. Russia would have gained by quickly defeating Ukraine. If it is prolonged, it will bleed endlessly. So it is in America's interest to prolong it, because it would like to bleed Russia white, which is not in Russians' interest. Okay. The second point is about whether sanctions will hit. That was the point I wanted to. I agree with most of what the Air Marshal said. He has deep knowledge about warfare and all that, which I totally agree, and I yield to his experience and knowledge. I'm really a greenhorn in the warfare. But I wanted to say something about sanctions, whether sanctions will hit Russia. And he said that Russia is food sufficient. and Russia is weapon sufficient because it is all indigenous. There I have some difficulty. I was in Russia in '85, and I saw severe food shortage. We were there for a month. What we got is only potatoes and beef, nothing else. We were starving of food. Okay, and that's my personal experience, but it's not food sufficient really. It produces certain items, but when you say food, our plate should be full around. You have to have vegetables, pulses, and everything, but it is not. Secondly, in economy, it was a superpower, then also military power. It was never an economic superpower. And now that military power also is truncated, and economically it has gone to China. And China is being talked about as next superpower, or it has substituted Russia. Russia is a very weak economy. It is not in G7, out of the G7 countries. And if you see its economic partners, like the entire G20 countries, if you see, there is none except China, perhaps, which is dealing with Russia. So Russia is a very fragile economy. Certainly a strong military, even now, that's why they're fighting. They can challenge NATO also. But economically, it is quite weak. So in a prolonged war, Russia will suffer. And the sanctions will bite, and Russia will decide to either to stop the war or to end the war, either way. So I have a problem in accepting that Russia does not care about sanctions and it can go on. And these days in a globalized economy, as long as we are not really opening up to the world, look at our Hindu rate of economic growth, which was 3%. Come 91, restructuring, what Manmohan Singh and others started, our foreign reserves were nil, and then the so-called LPG, liberalization, privatization, globalization, our economy peaked. Now we are having an impressive growth. So unless you are part of the world economy, how did China grow? Expert on China is Professor Prakash, not me, but at least I know that because of the heavy investment made by the Western countries. China, people said, economically a capitalist country, politically a communist. So it opened up so much and it attracted investment. So China is the second largest economy of the world. It is flexing its economic muscles. If you do not have economic strength, today the measure of a country's power is economy, not military anymore. So that is why China is standing up to America, not militarily so far, economically. It is flexing its economic muscles and using its economic power in international politics. So Russia does not have that. So how long Russia can sustain it? Ukraine, of course, like Air Marshal said, it is Russia, America's war, not Ukraine. So I agree. You see, and whether it can sustain a prolonged war, a proxy war with America, economically speaking, I have my doubts. That is all I wanted to say.
Okay. Air Marshal Srivastava, I would like you to answer this question, but what Dr. Giri said, that Russia could not actually capture Kyiv. I would like an answer from you about this, your comments on this. But before that, I would like to ask Mr. Dr. Prakash Srivastava, Sri Prakash, geographically, I would like to understand why Russia did not capture Kyiv and went away from there. What could be the reasons behind it? Kyiv was
before answering that question, I would just like to mention that paradoxically, the increase in oil prices, which is about 38% between 2020 2022 and further continuing, increase in oil and gas prices means that Russia, while fighting the war, is also earning more from its oil and gas export, which are its principal exports. So it is generating money to fight this war. And paradoxically, Europe is paying Russia the money to fight this war in many respects. So I think you have to realize that it is not going to be, to say that Russia is not going to be able to withstand sanctions, I'm afraid I wouldn't agree with that, because for a much more substantial period of time than we probably expect, it will be able to. And it has showed that where Russian-speaking people are concerned, as in Chechnya and Georgia, it is mobilizing Russian-speaking people in eastern Ukraine also. You see, the Russian-speaking people are going to be the second line of defense for Russia in the eastern Ukraine, which is almost 18 to 30% Russian speaking. And so also was the case in Chechnya, so also was the case in Georgia. So Russia has already shown that it is not fighting a kind of war to restore Soviet Union, but to unify Russia, as they say. It is about Russian nation. It is about unifying Russian nation. It is about Russian nationalism also. So it is not only about Ukrainian nationalism, it is also about Russian nationalism. Now, I think that Putin was very clear. Putin declared in the very beginning of the war that their intention is not to occupy the whole of Ukraine, because they know that they have been facing the rise of Ukrainian nationalism since 1990 and even earlier, that they cannot occupy against the will of the Ukrainian people, Ukrainian nation, their capital city. So they attacked Kiev, and finding that there was actual resistance was much stronger, they decided, no, let's get back to our original target, which is to consolidate our hold on eastern Ukraine and Crimea. That is the real target of Russia, and they are more Russian speaking, they're closer to Russian, and they've always been voting for presidents in Ukraine who are pro-Russia. You see, Zelensky has won only in 2019. Before that, they were pro-Russian presidents in Ukraine. And one of them, Yakunovich, who fled to Russia, who is still there. So Russia has also got popular support in eastern Ukraine. You have to understand that, like they did in Chechnya, like they did in Georgia. So they are not fighting a war as others were fighting in an alien country. This is not Czechoslovakia. This is not Hungary. This is still like Belarusia and Crimea. It is much more pro-Russian already ethnically than other parts of Ukraine. So they are fighting in, it's not Afghanistan either. They were Muslim. Here they are fighting with people who are inclined to be pro-Russian. And when they see that Russia is the more powerful power, they will become totally pro-Russian. That is Russia's own hope.
Okay, I will come back to you, Dr. Giri. But before that, I would like to have the answer from Air Marshal Srivastava. Sir, what could be the reason of not capturing Kyiv, and what could be the reason of capturing all the other part like Donetsk and Mariupol and all those areas?
So, DN, I'll agree with Dr. Giri that they could not capture. But I'll just add, it was not designed to be captured.
Okay.
There was will plus, okay, I want to take something with me, and I don't really want it so badly. Because now, if you look back, everybody knew that Russia is not coming there to unify. This is all part of the Psy war we play. That they want Ukraine back and they want to bring the glory of USSR pre 1991. It's not possible. I told you the sovereign is the one of the most changing thing in the world. History keeps changing, and we have another sovereign to defend. So armies also get divided. You have seen in case of India and Pakistan, and then we pledge to a different flag. So that is not the reason, because not possible at the moment. They do not have that kind of economic muscle, and that they may have military muscle, but corresponding economic muscle is not there. So they will not like to take. So if they don't want to take, so you now analyze what could be the reason of piling up so many, because they were not moving. In the initial days when we were commenting upon it, I said, okay, this is no way you fight a war. You have made a karma of 65 kilometers of artillery, tanks, and infantry, but you're not moving. What is this war you're trying to fight? So, and they have not dropped any significant amount of rockets and artillery over Ukraine. Kyiv, over Kyiv. If you really see, Kyiv has not been devastated. We have been to Kyiv now, I have friends coming from Kyiv, and they are back. None of the homes have been destroyed. Some part has been destroyed. A lot of reporters were there. So it is still intact and the life is getting back. They did not destroy, any military strategies, what they will do, they'll first destroy the hydroelectric plant. So when I see these markers, and they're letting people to go in trains and buses in initial year, this is also one war in which Putin has given maximum number of humanitarian corridors.
Yes.
And saying that they're firing at the corridors will not be a right thing, because that can be part of propaganda from the side which is being battered. So I believe that humanitarian corridors were never given, and a lot of people I know personally they have escaped, but that's a very thing. Otherwise, reporters also reported there that people were leaving, and the 4.8 lakh people, if they have reached Poland and other areas of Europe, they have reached through those corridors only. They were not attacked. So there was never an intent when you realize to actually take over the key, because then it should have started with the hydroelectric plant. It should have started with cutting off things and all assistance to that area, like they did in Mariupol. They battered Mariupol because they very badly wanted Mariupol. That's why they battered it. So they had the power to batter it, and nobody was coming in the initial times. So they were sure, and weapons have also not come in by then, the NATO weapons. So why should they do it? Because if you want to strategize to do denazification, you know that, as Professor Shrivastava said, that there are not 18%, nearly 60-70% Ukrainians, Russian Ukrainians are there. Since today it is Ukraine, which is the area of Luhansk and Donetsk. Luhansk is called LPR. They declared in few days of war fighting, LPR is a republic, and that became a Donetsk People's Republic. So they already declared. That's the eastern part, and the war was going on because that was one area where there was a rebellion going on from Russian ethnicity, and lot of forces were there. Ukrainian forces were very concentrated. Lot of battalions, lot of regiments were there fighting the rebels. Like we have a lot of people in Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir. Like it was there. So if those forces are stuck there, you come this side, they'll move from that side to this side in some numbers. You have to do now, you have to save your king. That is your capital. If you want to save your capital, you have to move somewhere and thin this out. The moment you thin it out, that's why Zelensky declared that 18 to 60 nobody is leaving. I'll give arms to everybody who's a civilian and everyone will fight. Because he felt short of hands. You should imagine a president telling this in the first day of the war is feeling short of hands. That means he's having pressure on Kyiv, he's having pressure on Kharkiv, he's having pressure in LPR, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, etc., and he feels that he doesn't have enough resources. It is a corollary. I mean, you can always analyze and find this as a consequence. So that's why he armed. That's why he declared martial law. Because if he is to fight for his country, he has to have some tools of fighting. And that time weapons were there only as much they had. So they consolidated that side. They declared those people, now they want to consolidate. So that cut off the access to Azov Sea. If you see the map, let the map come in front of the viewers, then you'll understand. Then you come down. Kherson is very important to be taken over. Part of Zaporozhye, that oblast, what they call it. Mariupol is a part where Azov battalion is there. That has to be broken because that is the back of, and that is known as most ferocious battalion. Is something like this. If you have done this Kohinoor, you can do others. So it's like a Azovstal became the, a kind of promised defense of Ukraine. You couldn't take over Azovstal. How will you take over the whole of the Ukraine? It became folklore, and that was taken over, and they surrendered. So basically, you now block the South Black Sea. The southern part running up to the eastern part. If you now think back and say that was the reason for him to give out all those things, you'll find it fitting in the picture. We can only build a picture. We don't have any kind of FSB information, or whatever information is coming, mostly is coming through Western media. And mark my word, we have used any time war is going on, you will never get the information. You'll get the information from two sides, two information. Yeah. I ask Ukrainians, they say we are winning the war. Now Zelensky has given a few days back, we are nearly going to win it. We'll defeat Russians, we'll push them back. On ground, 3 days later, Azovstal fell. He himself said, I want to save the lives of my heroes. And they should come. Ukraine needs them. Then the commander came out from there and said, I want to give the heroes the honorable burial. So we all keep saying as per the situation. And as per military ethics, I'm a soldier, I can tell you, you can't surrender. Unless you run short of weapon and food. An army person is a professional army will never surrender. So you should think that all these people who are fighting, except the few who are there in some other roles, they all are professional soldiers. We are taught to die. We are taught to die for the flag, called that time self-sovereign, and we also taught to die till the time you get your ammunition and till the time you get your food, you cannot surrender. So they also, if you notice, they also said, now no more supply of food is there, no more ammunition are there, therefore they have to be saved. So that is the reason for a professional army to surrender. So what will you fight with? Now there's nothing to fight with. So supply chain therefore takes the greatest dominance. So what they will do, you may give aid, but how the aid will reach the trench, that is the logistics chain. And that chain has to be established from west of Ukraine to east of Ukraine. So when somebody digs in, what we call digging in, now if Russians go into trenches along the eastern border, which they have moved inside, for Ukrainians it will become a very difficult proposition. And media can play a phenomenal role. You want to give the example? You have time? Then I'll give a Somalian example. There was a movie which came out, Black Hawk Down. Have you seen that movie? It is a very popular movie. Black Hawk Down. What was the Black Hawk operation? Muhammad Aidid was one of the terrorists he was one of the tribal leaders, but he became a big name in Somalia. When Barre, who was president, he was killed. The 14 tribes were fighting with each other. UN decided to form a team, peace team. Major Montgomery was in charge. And they wanted to capture Muhammad Aidid. Now, when they wanted to capture, they hired one human intelligence who was to indicate in which house he is there. They were only few kilometers out from there. This man was to go with his car, show it broken down, and open the bonnet and peep into the bonnet and close and try to do something and get away. His role was this. He got so scared of Aidid that he did that one block before. And what happened then? When he did one block before, everybody came down and they raided that block and Aidid got this thing. Their people then surrounded these chaps from other side. When they surrounded, what happened? They captured just one soldier, American soldier. They stripped him, paraded naked, and there was one BBC correspondent who took photographs, that video of that thing, and it went into the homes of Americans and Europeans. And that was the horror. One soldier. It was a horror which America couldn't bear. And they said, no, stop this nonsense. What's happening to our children, our sons and daughters? And Aidid was brought in the same Black Hawk to have the peace negotiation. One of the chaps said, why we did this? This was the power of media. When Montgomery, as a war, he fought the war, his attrition rate was 75:1. It's recorded. You can see, go somewhere and see the military. 75:1. That means one American died while 75 of the terrorists died. But still, America lost. Because the power of media, one photo went, and that was so much heart-rendering, people couldn't take it. So, media war, yes, there's no doubt. I'll give you emphatic yes. All check boxes, Ukraine has already won. There's no doubt about it. But the media is not under the control of one. If we call ourselves democratic and call Putin non-democratic, have we given equal chance to him present his case? The criminal court has declared Putin a war criminal.
Yes.
Have we done any due diligence in that? It's already, everything is well declared, already declared, done and dusted. So that's not the way democracy works. If we are truly democratic, but in the national interest, things are done. Democracy takes a backseat, national interest takes a first seat, national interest and the personal interest of the leader. And personal interest of the leader in constituency, it happens only one way. There he wants to continue his rule. I see it like this, Dr. Giri. He wants to perpetuate his rule. Like, she has become lifetime president. We don't like it. And he's a ruler who can enforce a lot of things. That side, he has a constituency to address. He has to please his constituency so that he continues. And he wins the November election. You talked about why he said January this war will stop. He's not a futurologist, but he's a controller. He knows if I say it will stop. So in November, the matter is decided. And then in December, January, he can take a call.
Yes.
In this, there's nothing. He's losing the money he is not losing. If there is 40 billion given to, which was $100 billion were given to Iraq, sir, Professor Giri, and 90% of that went to American companies for rebuilding. Rebuilding exercise, already an estimate of $500 billion was done about 2 months back by President Zelensky. I need $500 to
Yes, it has been.
to build my country. Now it must have $1,000 billion. So $1,000 billion will come to that country. Where will it go? Which are the companies you think will India get any share in that? Will China get any share in that? It'll all go to those countries who have given that money.
Yes.
That's the business we do in the form of line of credit in corporate world. We call it line of credit. Like we have given it to Vietnam. And the government of India has given to Vietnam line of credit and then given him the equipment. Then
Okay.
with interest he'll pay back. So
Okay.
ultimately the point is this will continue for a long while. There are beneficiaries of the war and nobody is a saint out there.
Yes.
The war
Okay.
has been invited.
We are
So there is a constant aggression.
running short of time now, and Dr. Giri, I think, wants to react on this. And yes,
no.
Dr. Giri.
There is no reaction. Some quick conceptual positions actually. You know, me and Air Marshal are saying the same thing. Democracy is internal, and foreign policy or international politics, it is your national interest. It is that is your external policy really. Democracy is never exported. Democracy is never promoted. It's an internal thing. When Britain was the oldest democracy, well, it colonized the whole world. So you know, how do you explain it? So when I refer to democracy, I always refer to internal politics. You talked about aid. Michael Dipton has done a classical work on politics of aid. So what you are saying is correct. This is reverse aid. One point I wanted to about Prakash, you know, the language being the basis of nationalism. We should remember that the nations, you know, nationalism and a state, or the nation and a state. Let's say nation and a state are not coterminous. So if somebody is speaking Russian in another country, you don't annex that. You know, look at Switzerland. They speak two languages. You know, one is German and French. Look at Belgium. They speak French and Flemish. You see, and look at Wales, which is part of UK. They don't speak English. They speak German and a mix of English. There are several examples where language divided. Look at Beluch. They are divided in 3 countries: Pakistan, Iraq, and Afghanistan. So you don't annex a country because you have similar speaking people. There are Swedish-speaking people in Finland. There are Swedish-speaking people in Norway. You see, when you countries are divided, like Air Marshal was saying, sovereignty changes, the boundary of sovereignty changes. Likewise, the nations also change. People get divided into different units. So Russia has no right to annex other country because the Russian-speaking people. I think that's a weak argument. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have carried on this session for a very long time, more than 1 hour. So I really thank you, Dr. Giri. Thank you, Dr. Sri Prakash, and thank you, Air Marshal Prakash Srivastava, for coming over to this debate and giving us so much precious time and explaining all in detail about the Ukraine and Russia war. We are really obliged, and we hope that our viewers are definitely benefited by this debate. If you think this debate was useful to you, please do not forget to send in your comment in the comment box below the video. And we would like to sign off now, and we'll see you soon with some new topic on this Ukraine and Russia war. We will soon be back with some good topics and good lectures and debates. And till then, keep watching DN News. Thank you very much. Good night. Shubhratri. Shabba Khair.
Thank you.